They shook your hand with a smile, but in their other hand, they held the knife. They called you brother, but only while you were useful. They clapped for your victories, until your victories outshone theirs. Most people call it paranoia, but Machiavelli called it wisdom, because the most dangerous illusion we're sold is this: that loyalty is sacred, that friendships are unconditional, that kindness guarantees safety. But in the game of power, no one is truly your friend, not in the way you hope. Look around you. Every alliance, every smile, every "I've got your back." It's not built on love. It's built on leverage. Even affection has an economy. Even intimacy has its price. People align with you because you serve a function: emotional, financial, social, psychological. And the moment that function ends, so does the illusion. You've felt this before. In the friend who disappeared after you set a boundary. In the coworker who changed when you got promoted. In the lover who stopped calling once you stopped chasing. This isn't pessimism. This is the beginning of freedom. Because once you see clearly, once you stop playing the fool, once you stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage, you change. You start walking like a strategist, not a servant. You move like a lion, not a lamb. And yes, you may feel alone, but that loneliness is clarity. And in that clarity, a new kind of power is born. Let me ask you something, and answer this honestly in the comments. Who still stands beside you when you're no longer convenient? Who claps when you rise? And more importantly, who hides their applause and hopes you fall? This video is not about cynicism. It's about awakening. Because what Machiavelli knew, and what most people fear to admit, is this: no one is your friend. And that's your greatest advantage. No one wakes up hoping to be betrayed. But betrayal doesn't arrive with a scream. It walks in, quietly, in the form of absence, in the silence of someone who once swore they'd never leave. You called them a friend. Machiavelli would call them a temporary alliance. Because in the real world, loyalty isn't built on love. It's built on leverage, on need, on usefulness. So ask yourself, who feeds off your presence? Who wins when you're silent? Who shines brighter when you're standing still? Most people don't love you. They love the way they feel when they're next to you. And when that feeling fades, so does their allegiance. Let's go deeper. Picture two men in the royal court of Florence. They toast to loyalty, swear brotherhood, smiles wide, hands clasped. But under the table, both grip a dagger, because only one will rise. Only one will win the prince's favor. The other will vanish. Behind every smile, there's a question. Are you still useful to me? Machiavelli saw this daily. Nobles who bowed by day and conspired by candlelight. He understood. Loyalty is not unconditional. It is rented, never owned, paid in currency. Fear, admiration, opportunity, advantage. And when the rent isn't paid, the smile fades. The applause stops. The mask slips. This isn't bitterness. It's vision. Because when you see the transaction, you stop mistaking proximity for trust. You stop confusing praise with respect. You stop thinking silence means support. Machiavelli once wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." You don't need to memorize that line. You've already lived it. Remember the friend who vanished the moment you started setting boundaries. The lover who shifted the second you stopped being their therapist. The colleague who once cheered, but fell silent when you surpassed them. They didn't leave because you changed. They left because you stopped being their ladder. Your rise exposed their stagnation. Your clarity disrupted their control. So what do? You stop giving blind loyalty. You build alliances ones based on clarity, not hope. You don't ask, do they like me? You ask, what do I symbolize to them? Because in this world, most relationships are not bonds, they're contracts, unspoken, unacknowledged, but deeply real. You want freedom. Then stop giving yourself away for validation and start investing where leverage flows both ways. Because when someone smiles at you, yes, it might be real, but it's also a strategy. So smile back, but keep your sword sharp. Loyalty sounds sacred, like something carved in stone, like a bond forged in fire, like forever. But that's the fairy tale version, the one we grew up watching, not the one we actually lived. Because in the real world, loyalty has a cost, and people only pay that cost while the reward is still worth it. Machiavelli saw it clearly. He wrote, "Men forget the death of their father more easily than the loss of their inheritance." That wasn't cruelty. It was reality. People aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to the feeling they get from you. The access, the elevation, the sense of advantage. And when that benefit ends, so does the illusion. You've seen it. The friend who promised, "We'll always be close." The partner who whispered, "I'll never walk away." The team who shouted, "We rise together." Now, ask yourself, where are they now? Gone. Not because they lied, but because the terms of the unspoken contract expired. Machiavelli didn't hate loyalty. He just never romanticized it. He saw it for what it was, a weather pattern, bright and warm when everything's convenient, cold and vanishing when pressure arrives. So how do you survive this? You stop assuming loyalty means permanence. You stop treating forever like it's unconditional. And instead, you build leverage. Leverage that makes leaving costly. Let's be clear. You don't need people who promise to stay. You need people who know that walking away from you would collapse their structure, disrupt their plans, dismantle their position. Because people don't betray what they need. They betray what they think they can replace. You want to be irreplaceable. Then don't just be kind. Be necessary. Be the one with the map, the vision, the key they can't duplicate. Be the absence that feels like the room lost its oxygen. And if you've ever been stabbed in the back by someone you trusted, you already know. It's not hate that ends loyalty. It's math. Cost-benefit calculations, disguised as connection. So, what's next? You stop chasing blind trust. You build respect. You build systems. You draw boundaries like stone walls around a fortress. You don't beg for allegiance. You make allegiance a privilege. And above all, you never again confuse proximity with permanence. Because the day you expect loyalty without leverage is the day you become the easiest target in the room. If what you're hearing hits a nerve, if this mirrors something you've lived through, then leave a mark. Comment below. When did forever turn out to be temporary? Like this video if you've learned the hard way that loyalty has limits. Share this with someone who's still bleeding for the ungrateful blamed. Subscribe if you're done playing the fool. Because here, we don't chase validation. We build power. And if you believe in the message, if you want to help us stay honest, sharp, and independent, tap that super thanks. Every gesture counts. Let's keep going. You're not broken. You're just finally awake. They told you to be kind, to always forgive, to give the benefit of the doubt, and you did. You let it slide when they insulted you. You stayed silent when they took advantage. You kept giving, hoping that someday they'd finally see your heart. But they didn't. They saw your silence as permission, your generosity as a pattern, and your kindness. They used it as a lever to open every door they wanted until they no longer needed you. Machiavelli would call this the most fatal illusion. Because when you lead with kindness, without power, you don't earn love. You earn entitlement. But let's go deeper. Where does this begin? Not in adulthood, but in childhood, in the homes where emotions were inconvenient, where being a good kid meant being silent, selfless, agreeable, where needing something made you too much, where love was given only when earned. That's how many of us were trained. We didn't become kind. We became trained to appease, to be likable, to be low maintenance, to put others first, even when it slowly erased us. But here's the truth. In the game of power, predictability is a liability, and kindness without boundaries, that's not virtue. That's bait. The world isn't gentle with the endlessly kind. It bleeds them slowly, like the man who always says yes until no one hears him anymore, like the woman who always forgives until she forgets herself, like the friend who never complains until their silence becomes the background noise everyone steps over. Machiavelli warned us, it is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both, not because fear is cruel, but because fear protects. So, no, this isn't a call to cruelty. It's a call to strategy. It means weaponizing your kindness, to give only when it strengthens your position, to forgive but only when it cements your leverage, to help but never at the cost of your own center of gravity. And if someone takes more than they give, pull back. If they mistake your softness for submission, speak less. But watch more, because every act of kindness that isn't paired with strength becomes a chain, a rope, a cage you built, thinking it was a home. People don't test your patience, they test your limits. And if you have none, they keep pushing and pushing until you disappear inside your own generosity. The solution: draw the line, not with rage, but with presence. Say less, but mean every word. Give less, but let every gesture echo power. Be the kind of person who can smile with warmth, but carry silence like a sword. That's Machiavellian kindness. Not blind, not naive, but calculated, deliberate, and dangerous. Because the world doesn't need more nice people. It needs people who know when to stop being nice. You are taught to feel everything, to cry when it hurts, to speak when it stings, to react, to defend, to explode. But the more you expressed, the more power you gave away. Because in the game of control, the first to react is the first to lose. Machiavelli didn't fear the passionate. He feared the still, the ones who bleed in silence, who smile in discomfort, who walk away without a word, without a twitch. Not because they are weak, but because they are calculating. He knew what most people never learn. A man who cannot master his emotions will always serve one who can. Let's get tactical. In every negotiation, in every confrontation, in every moment of pressure, the one who wins is not the loudest, not the smartest, but the one who can withstand the fire without blinking. They're not heartless. They're trained, like a warrior, calm in the storm, focused in chaos, a still blade waiting for the right time to strike. Because emotions are predictable, and what's predictable can be manipulated. If they know what makes you angry, they'll poke it. If they know how to make you chase, they'll run. If they know silence makes you panic, they'll vanish. It's not malice, it's mechanics. You're either the player or the puppet. So how do you stop being the puppet? You train your nervous system like a soldier sharpens his blade. You learn to feel without reacting, to notice without responding, to pause when your instinct screams to pounce. This is where true power is born. In the gap between emotion and expression, the space between the trigger and your response, that's your battlefield. And most people lose before they even step into the ring. Because once they can't read you, they can't reach you. And once they can't reach you, you become a ghost in the system. A shadow they can't predict. A force they can't manipulate. Picture this. You walk into a room, someone tests you, insults you, mocks you, but you don't flinch. You don't defend. You simply observe. And that silence, that stillness, it speaks louder than any rebuttal ever could. It says, I'm not here to react. I'm here to rule. The man who needs to prove his power has none. But the one who can stare through the storm unshaken, unreadable, untouched, that's the one they fear. That's the one they follow. That's the one they respect. Because the emotionally detached don't win by being cold. They win by being prepared. They don't argue with fools. They don't fight every battle. They don't seek understanding. They've mastered the one rule most never will. Control yourself, or be controlled. All real power begins with one thing: how others perceive you. Not who you truly are, but who they think you are. Not your truth, but the illusion you allow them to believe. Machiavelli put it plainly. Men judge more by the eyes than by the hands. For everyone sees what you appear to be. Few know what you really are. That's not deception. That's strategy. Because you can't control the world. But you can control the story they tell themselves about you. Look at the most powerful people. They're not always the smartest or the strongest, but they're the ones who own the room before they speak. Why? Because in the game of power, perception is leverage. If people believe you're unpredictable, they tread lightly. If they sense you don't need approval, they offer respect first. If they think you're capable of more than you show, they hesitate before testing your limits. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to act like you don't need to. So how do you master this art? It's not about faking confidence. It's about building strategic presence. Here are the 3 rules of perception warfare. 1. Calculated inconsistency. Never be too easy to read. Predictability invites underestimation. Be warm one moment, cold the next. Be generous then distant. Show up when it matters. Vanish when expected. Let your behavior carry just enough inconsistency to plant doubt in their mind. Am I sure I understand this person? That doubt is power. 2. Mirror strategy. Most people don't see you. They see their projection of you. Use it. Mirror their energy back at them without confirming or denying it. If they're insecure, your silence feels like strength. If they're manipulative, your calm feels like a threat. You don't even need to speak. Just let them wonder what you're thinking. 3. Tactical silence. Silence isn't absence. It's control. One pause, timed right, carries more weight than 1,000 justifications. The moment you stop over-explaining, people start making assumptions. They fill in the blanks with fear or curiosity. In silence, you become a mirror for their imagination. And imagination is more powerful than any explanation. Now, let's ground this in history. Cao Cao, the Chinese warlord, he wasn't the strongest on the battlefield, but he was a master of perception. At times, he appeared as the fool. Other times, the patriot. Other times, the villain. Each version was a tactic. Each perception served a different opponent. They called him paranoid. But that paranoia kept him alive. While kings were being slaughtered in their sleep, he understood a brutal truth. You don't need to be feared. You just need them to believe that crossing you has consequences. Fast forward to today. We live in a world of filters, captions, algorithms. Whoever controls the frame controls the narrative. You could be the most grounded, thoughtful person in the room. But if someone labels you toxic and you stay silent, the silence writes the script. Because people don't react to you. They react to the version of you they believe is real. So what does Machiavellian mastery look like now? You stop oversharing. You stop defending. You stop trying to explain your worth. Instead, you become a question mark. Someone they can't pin down. Someone whose energy makes people second-guess their assumptions. Someone whose silence carries strategy, not insecurity. You turn ambiguity into armor. You turn distance into mystique. You let every move feel like a chess piece measured, deliberate, essential. Because here's the truth. The less people know about your boundaries, the more careful they become around them. Loyalty. It sounds like honor, like something etched in blood, beyond logic, beyond gain. But in the game of power, loyalty is not a virtue. It's a variable. And variables cannot be trusted. Smart people don't rely on promises. They rely on architecture. They don't hope for devotion. They design necessity. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Men forget the death of their father more easily than the loss of their inheritance. Cold, yes, but brutally accurate, because betrayal most of the time isn't personal. It's logistical. Let's bring this closer to your life. Picture this. You build a startup. Your co-founder calls you brother. You suffer through 2 a.m. code sprints. Shared vision, shared fire, shared sacrifice. Then Series A lands. Money enters. Status shifts. Suddenly he rewrites the board, restructures the deal, rebrands the mission, and cuts you out. You ask, how could he do this? Wrong question. The real question is, what system let him do it? You didn't lose because he changed. You lost because the structure didn't stop him. There were no consequences, no cost, no friction. Because loyalty in this world is not guaranteed. It's engineered, it's incentivized, it's contractual. Whether written or unspoken, Machiavelli never depended on affection. He depended on deterrence. He didn't need them to love him. He needed them to fear the cost of betrayal and calculate that crossing him wasn't worth it. This is the new game. You don't need devotion. You need dependence. Build systems so tight that your absence doesn't hurt feelings. It collapses operations, projects, momentum, like removing the final bolt in a suspension bridge. Not flashy, but fatal. Think of the irreplaceables. Steve Jobs. He wasn't just a founder. He was the face, the myth, the code behind the culture. When Apple removed him, they begged him back. Why? Because his presence wasn't sentimental. It was structural. Now ask yourself, if you disappear, do they adapt? Or do they scramble? If they adapt, you're replaceable. If they crumble, you've become infrastructure. So stop asking, do they appreciate me? Start asking, have I made myself essential? Here's the framework. Own irreplaceable knowledge. Be the only one who knows how the engine runs. Control the bridges. Be the one who links people, processes, or outcomes. Design silent deterrence. Make leaving you feel like self-sabotage even if they don't know why. This may sound dark, but this is the game, and you're already in it. You either build precision, or you get played by sentiment. So let me leave you with this. People don't betray what they fear losing. They betray what they think they've outgrown. Stop being a memory. Start being a mechanism. Don't ask for loyalty. Engineer necessity. Because when the structure is right, you won't need to ask who's staying. They'll ask themselves if they can afford to leave. You've been told that being alone is a sign of failure, that the man with no crowd must have done something wrong. That solitude means sadness, isolation, rejection. But history tells a different story. Because the most powerful people stood alone first. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Because those who see too clearly, who think too deeply, who walk without needing permission, always become a threat. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. A prince must learn to be alone in his thinking, even when surrounded by people. Why? Because the moment you rely on others for validation, for comfort, for direction, you've handed them the keys to your mind. And when someone holds the keys to your mind, they hold the power to destroy it. So, let's be precise. When you stand with the crowd, you gain comfort, but you lose clarity. You absorb their noise, their panic, their praise, their projections. But when you stand alone, you hear one voice, your own. And in that silence, strategy sharpens, vision clears, conviction grows fangs. Because solitude is not the absence of people, it's the presence of self. You stop being a character in someone else's story. You start writing your own. You stop reacting. You start observing. You begin to move like a shadow, present, but untouchable, visible, but unreadable. And when you're alone, truly alone, you begin to see what others can't. The illusions, the masks, the noise. You see how much of life is a stage, how much of connection is performance, and how rare true power is. Look at the great tacticians. Marcus Aurelius, Niccolò Machiavelli, Otto von Bismarck. They were not surrounded by noise. They were surrounded by distance, feared, misunderstood, but always one move ahead, because they were trained in the silence. In Solitude, their thoughts sharpened like blades. Their instincts became maps. Their eyes saw not just actions but intentions. And in the modern world, solitude is even more dangerous because it's rare. Everyone is performing. Everyone is watching. Everyone is reacting. But the one who doesn't chase attention, the one who doesn't flinch when excluded, the one who walks into a room without needing to be seen, that's the one they start to fear. Not because he's loud, but because he's unreadable. And in the game of power, unreadable means untouchable. So let me be brutally clear. You don't need more friends. You need more space. You don't need more applause. You need more clarity. Because when you rely on no one, you owe no one. And when you owe no one, you can't be controlled. Solitude is not a wound. It's a weapon. It turns your mind into a fortress, your energy into armor, your silence into strategy. Because when you face your own darkness, no one else can use it against you. The most dangerous man in the room is not the one who talks loud, not the one who brags, not the one who gathers fans. It's the one who sits still, listens, smiles faintly, and says almost nothing. Because his stillness whispers something deeper, power that doesn't need to prove itself. If you've made it this far, you're not just curious, you're awake. And you've crossed a threshold most never do. You've seen the masks slip. You've heard the applause fade. You've watched how fast loyalty evaporates when you're no longer convenient. And in that silence, you found the truth they never wanted you to know. No one is your friend. Not in the game of power. Not when survival is the prize. They taught you to chase connection, to believe in unconditional love, to find safety in smiles. But Machiavelli would whisper something darker and far more useful. There is no morality in war. And life, my friend, is war, disguised as civility. So what do you do now? You don't become bitter. You become sharp. You don't isolate in fear. You design your distance, like a fortress. You stop proving yourself. You let your silence say what your words never could. You stop begging to be seen. You start making your absence impossible to ignore, because in a world built on optics, the one who disappears strategically becomes a myth. And myths hold more power than facts ever will. Let others chase validation. You chase leverage. Let them collect fans. You collect leverage point. Let them cry over loyalty. You build alliances that bleed if broken. This isn't cynicism. This is clarity. This is the death of naivete and the birth of strategic life. Because here's the final truth. The strongest move you'll ever make is to stop expecting the world to be fair and start making yourself immune to its betrayals. You protect your energy like a crown. You treat every smile like a chess piece, every handshake like a silent contract, every promise like a test waiting to be graded, and when you lie awake at night, not out of fear, but from the quiet calm of awareness, you'll remember this. Your solitude is no longer a wound. It's your shield. Your silence is no longer desperation. It's your weapon. And your mind trained in shadows, sharpened in truth, is your greatest advantage. Let others sleep. You build. Let others play fair. You play to win. Let others crave comfort. You endure clarity, because those who survive the betrayal, those who rise through the silence, those who walk alone but never off course, they are the ones who lead when the world burns.